Hello and good day and welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to have you guys here on this Thursday, July 13th, 2023. Thank you for tuning in. Let's talk about silver. It's been a long road. I thought that I knew the fundamentals about silver. This was years ago, and on my channel I've been saying, like, you can go back and some of my older shows, from years ago. Some people look them up and they say, well, this hasn't happened. I was saying there and there that the world's going to run out of silver and silver price is going to go up massively high. People watch the older shows and it didn't happen for all those years, and they say, oh, that didn't happen. Well, the fundamental of it happening hasn't happened yet. And we're going to get into it, and we're going to talk about why it has to happen, and it has to happen very soon now. And I know it's been a long time waiting, and I know they've manipulated the price of silver all these years while I said that it was going to run into shortage. That's because I know it's going to run into shortage. I absolutely know. You want to know how I know? It's things that are, it's math. Let's take a look at some of the math. But first I want to show you guys a picture. And I'm going to tell you guys, a picture tells 1,000 words. This picture is from the latest summit that they had, summit meeting of the G7 or whatever, and Zelensky went to visit and everything. Here it is. Take a look. Well, picture tells 1,000 words. And that man has a very frustrated face. I wonder why. Anyway, let's move on and talk about silver. Silver production globally. Now, it did drop off during COVID, right in here, a little bit. I'm amazed that they were able to produce that much silver during COVID, considering all the restrictions that they had to go through, and different countries had different restrictions. And you can imagine the miners, in the mines, with things like lockdowns and things like that. But still, they were able to produce a significant amount of silver. It didn't drop off that much, really, considering. Still, it was over 20,000 tons. Now, there's 34,000 ounces to a ton of silver. And so if you multiply it, it runs around 800 million ounces of silver that year. And now that's about 850 million ounces, more or less. Around 25,000 tons, metric tons, and that's what it comes out to in ounces. About 800, right this year, about 850 million ounces. But what you notice is, if you were to go back in history and take a look at this chart, I can't pull up the chart that goes all the way back. Well, maybe I could, but what you'd find is in the Industrial Revolution, before the Industrial Revolution, these lines would have been absolutely tiny compared to what they are now. They probably wouldn't even show on the chart. They'd be so tiny, these blue lines. Because silver production had to be done with a pickaxe and a shovel. They had to mine the old-fashioned way. Then came along the steam shovel. Back in, I think, the 1920s or 1930s. Oh man, that could move earth. And then later it turned into diesel and hydraulics. And it's even greater capacities. And this is what's allowed them to move such massive amounts of earth. And they have to crush the rocks down into powder. And this is what allows them to have these great numbers, these astronomical numbers for silver. But what they're doing over these last number of years, when you see these very tall blue lines, anything over 800 million ounces drawn out of the ground, this is a limited resource. It's like picture in your mind, it's like picking an apple tree. There's not unlimited amounts of apples on the apple tree, like in an orchard, And of course, they always pick the easiest apples first. Those are the apples that are closest to the ground. You don't even need a ladder. You just reach up and grab them. So that's what they've been doing with these big, powerful machines. It's enabled them to pick all the easy apples. So we're seeing that they've actually increased their efforts to keep up, to try to keep up, but still they're limited. And this is going to drop off fast at a certain point. It's not going to stay here at 850 million ounces. This is going to start dropping as the years progress now, because ore grades are going down. No matter how hard they fight to try to keep these numbers up, they're going to drop. It's diminishing returns because they've picked all the easy apples at this point when it comes to silver. So it's going to require more energy. It's what they call ore grades. They grade ore. When they dig out a ton of ore, which is rocks, let's just call it rocks that have silver in them, in the powder inside the rocks. They dig out that ton of rocks. They put it on a conveyor belt, goes to a crusher, rock crusher, crushes it down, then another conveyor belt where they crush it smaller, and they keep crushing it until they get it down to powder, and then they put it inside a slurry pond. It's like full of water, and they agitate it in there, and they add chemicals to separate the silver from the... This is how it's done. Well, the ore grades, they used to get I think it was 17 ounces out of a ton of ore. I think now it's dropped down to 6. So in order to keep these numbers up, they have to mine a lot more ore. And it's ever diminishing returns. And as we look into the future, it's going to get a lot worse. It might be at 6 ounces. It might drop down to 3, 2. But they'll still keep mining it because you can't use anything else except gold in an awful lot of electronics and things like solar panels and stuff. So we're going to talk about solar panels, Let's take a look at this. Solar could devour most of the world's silver reserves by 2050. Just silver alone. So what's left for investor demand? Which is increasing, by the way. So if solar's going to take it all pretty soon, and it's growing and growing and growing, well, how are they going to cover investor demand? This is just ridiculous. Now, one of the things is they're already going into deficit now. And what does that mean? You're going to ask. What does it mean they're going into deficit with silver? It means it has to be shared. So the mines are the only thing that's producing silver, and they produce roughly 850 million ounces. So in simpler terms, picture it like a paycheck, Picture it $850. Instead of 850 million ounces, say $850. That's what you got coming in every month. And what's going out? How much is all of your expenses? Your electric bill, your food bill, your house rent, and everything else. Say it's $1,150, and you're only making $850. You're $300 short. Well, this is what's happening in silver right now. And so this is a no-brainer. Ultimately, in the end, there's not going to be enough silver for investment demand and industrial demand. So who's going to go without? And this is coming very soon because they're consuming way more, and there's not that big in inventories. Now, see, there's one of the factors that comes into play here, and we're talking about this, is inventory of silver that's ready for sale that's not been mined, silver that maybe they've had put away for a long time, that's we don't know about. Maybe in a vault someplace. To cover this shortfall that they're having. While investor demand grows, and while industrial demand is basically holding the same, but they don't have enough to go around for both investor demand and industrial supply as well. So maybe they'll be able to use this silver that's on the sidelines that we don't know anything about. But how big of an inventory is that? We don't know. They won't tell us. But it's going to have to be in the hundreds of millions of ounces to cover this shortfall every year. Well, it's going to run out. That's going to run out. Question mark is how long. And we're going to have a shortage when that runs out. When they don't have any more on the sidelines that we don't know about. When that vault or whatever it is empty. And then they don't have enough coming out of the mines to cover both investor demand and industrial. Then there's going to be... then the whole jig is up. They cannot continue to manipulate the price. But at the same time, we've got a hyperinflation coming at us. And somehow the Fed out there right now, the Fed is like trying to fight inflation, but at the same time, I think they're sneaking money on the sidelines somehow into the system, some way or another, and that's why the markets haven't crashed. I'm very suspicious of this. There is parts of it I know that they're injecting liquidity into the system, but how much, and is it enough to keep? But what this is going to do is it's going to keep it. They have to. Only way to really stop inflation is you have to raise interest rates above the rate of inflation considerably, enough so that they can make a profit above the rate of inflation, and at the same time, you have to let the system purge itself with a deflationary event in order to get things back in sync, which they're not doing. So inflation's going to keep running away. And, you know, when they throw in the towel, the first big emergency that comes in, they're going to throw in the towel on fighting inflation. They will lower rates back down again when the first emergency comes. So inflation's going to win the day in the end. And that means your money and your purchasing power, your money's going to lose. So you can imagine a mad rush at that point in time to try to get into some asset class that's going to preserve your wealth. Gold and silver. That's where they're going to go. But this market's so small and so tiny, and what I'm trying to show you guys is how all of it's being devoured. You're using the word devour here. Devour the world's silver. And this is exactly what's happening. So there's a point in time in a not too distant future, the world's going to run out of silver. There's not going to be enough to go around. And this is a definite fact. So what's going to happen to the price when that occurs? And then, after the price shoots up, and I mean it could be 100 times because of a hyperinflation, you know, I mean it could be massive. But I mean, regardless of that, if they don't have silver for industry, they're going to put laws in place so that they do. They're not going to sit there and say, hey, you know what? Let everybody buy all the silver that they want. I know we're out of silver and we haven't got any to make Apple iPhones. That ain't going to happen. I'll tell you what's going to happen. The ordinary investor out there is just not going to be able to buy it. I see a limited future, you know, for these stores and stuff that retail silver sellers and stuff. I see a limited future because of them obtaining supply. It's all going to be sent to the industrial use. And industrial users are the only ones that's going to have it. I mean, they have to make their smart bombs, don't they? Anyway. So I see also a time in the future before that happens when silver explodes in price. And that explosion in price is only going to fuel higher demand. Much higher demand. And so what do we see happening today with silver? Oh, well, we're up 58 cents on the day so far. It could be starting to happen right now, everything I've been talking about. Because the funny thing about this is the higher the price goes, the more it's going to be in demand. and this is the silly thing about things like this, is when the price is down, nobody wants it, it's unloved. You know, there's not a great demand. People, in fact, are scared of it. But when the price starts to shoot to the moon, they get the fear of missing out. And they're all in there buying like crazy. That's when it really starts to rip and disappear. So, you know, I mean, even still, even though it's went up over $1 in the last day or two, it's still rock bottom price. But, you know, for you guys who've bought in already, hang on tight. Hang on tight. There's something monstrously big coming here. You know? Think about it. You got a whole entire system that's so fragile, and it's all built on money that isn't really money. And then you got one thing that's real, or two things that are real. The only things that are real, and the only things that have always been real, is gold and silver. What could go wrong with their Keynesian system? We're at the end game right now, guys. Hang in there a little bit longer. Boy, they've really played this game. They've played a hard fight in keeping and suppressing the price of the metals. Because they know when they release the price and they lose the battle, they know it's over for their fiat currencies. Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. And have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.